We are happy to bring you Spencer Legacy interviewing heavy metal enthusiasts CEO Riley McShane and President Steve Sawyer of indie publisher Proponent Games.
This is Spencer Legacy, managing editor at MonsterVine.com, and I'm here with Steve Tom Sawyer as well as Riley McShane of Proponent Games. How are you guys today?
Good, man. Hanging in there. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. So you guys you just sent out a press release about Proponent Games the other day, so I wanted to ask a couple questions, see what's cooking. The first one is, would you like to tell me about Proponent Games, what it is, why you guys founded it, pretty much everything there is to know?
Totally. So, I mean, it started off strangely enough as this this idea that was a little bit of background, I guess, before we jump into that. So my career prior to this, and still, alongside of this, is that I'm a touring musician. I play in the death metal world, and that was like my full-time gig until the coronavirus happened, and we had to cancel a headlining tour, and all of a sudden it was just like the entire live music industry just kind of shut down. So, when that happened, tons of us, us being musicians, were just kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what to do, what was going to happen next. And from there, I was just kind of like, all right, well, we'll do the same things on the band side of things, where it's like live streams and, all these other kind of creative marketing things to do. But in my time, I've always wanted to make a video game. I'm a huge video game nerd. I've always been, it's just a huge part of me and my upbringing. So I made like a quick little game script and kind of came up with an idea for it, and reached out to a couple people to try to see what I needed as far as getting this game made. Steve being one of those people, and what the general consensus was like, oh, if you're starting from the ground up and you want to get any interest from anyone, you need to have a vertical slice of your game, which is going to cost you anywhere from 20 to 30 grand. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me I have to spend, this amount of money on making a chunk of the game, and then publishers still might not be interested, and then I'll just be sitting on this thing that I spent a huge amount of money on. And Steve was kind of just like, yeah, it's pretty much the way it shakes out, so I was like, well, what if instead of just trying to make this one game happen, we did kind of our own thing? Because after, kind of seeing how other publishers were working, and, even smaller time publishers, I was just kind of like, I feel like there's something that could be done to improve this system. And so that's kind of where the idea for Proponent started, and where we kind of, built our business model, from that ground. So Steve, what's our business model? You're good at explaining this part. You're good.
I guess, find cool games, put all our resources and know-how behind them. And, I am a firm believer that we're not trying to hard sell anyone on anything. I think the key is that we're representing games that everybody would be down to play if they just knew about them. And so really the whole problem that we're trying to solve is finding the things that I guess don't fit into the portfolio of what everyone else is sort of publishing for indie publishers, and then putting a lot of love and support behind those things, just because discoverability on digital platforms is a nightmare, right? So that's really the bread and butter of getting that stuff out there. That's the business model in a nutshell. Find good games, put good things behind them, and hopefully, cool people will play them and continue to play them.
So it's about the exposure then.
Yeah, I guess so. And again, I'm trying to give you succinct answers, so I'm not, giving you this huge thing to sift through. But if you really want to get a little bit more, I guess, exploratory with it, most indie publishers that are out there right now have a house style, right? And so, if you look at one of my favorite people out there right now, collection of people, Raw Fury, they put out a lot of really cool games. but I think like there would definitely be. I don't want to say that I know like what their house style is or whatever, but I think like they have cultivated an audience around like picking a certain aesthetic or picking a certain type of like easy to digest games, right? And so I think there's this thing of like, if you see a game, you would know like, oh, that's a Raw Fury game, or better example, that's a Devolver game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right, totally. So there's this thing of like, well, what's our house style? Like, what are the things that we want to play? What are the things that we like? And you know, surprisingly, for two dudes who are super into death metal, you know, like one of the first things that got us really excited was, you know, this platforming breakout game, Antonball, because it's a grip of fun to play. Like as soon as you know, like dive into it for more than a couple of minutes, you're like, oh, dude, I could spend a couple of hours just clearing levels on this game. So
Yeah.
that like sort of stickiness, you know, like that I think is going to end up being like our house style more than anything. We want to throw our weight behind games that you're going to want to like, you know, think about when you're not playing them.
So with the Antonball and Rise of the Betrayer, what was it that made you guys kind of gravitate towards them as your first projects? What was it about those two?
So I met Anthony or Tony at E3 last year, and he's from Summit Sphere, and they were pitching me a totally different game. And as cool as that game is, I think Antonball for right now fits more with like what we want to put out and more of kind of like what I would want other people to play. And it wasn't like this thing of, oh, like the jury is I'm afraid like Tony's gonna see this and be like, oh, so they don't care about my other game at all, huh? It's like it's just this thing of like the timing. It made the most sense to really like pump resources and you know, effort behind Antonball. And I think it's this thing of, again, like when I was done playing it, the first thing I was thinking about was, man, I probably could have like gotten back in there and done this different and got a better score. And I was like, oh, okay, word. Like as soon as you kind of have that experience, right, it's like that's probably a good game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And so it was a similar thing with Rise of the Betrayer. I had talked to the creator, Paul, and it was for a completely different project. Because, you know, I've worked on game releases for like the last few years. And so it was kind of something along those lines. I can't get into specifics, but needless to say, that didn't end up kind of going through, and it presented an opportunity where we could come in and just finish the game in its current state and, you know, do it that way, which I thought was like, okay, let's not pass that up, because there were multiple people interested in both of these games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of diverts me into the point of like the thing that's, so our business structure is built on, you know, like three pillars that are kind of outlined in like our mission statement. And those pillars are passion, opportunity, and community. You know, we want to have games that are made by developers who are really passionate about their ideas. We don't want to just put out cell phone shovelware just to make a quick buck and, you know, do things that way. Kind of be like a puppy mill of publishers, which, you know, works on a business level, but you lose a lot doing that as well. You know, so we want to have that passion from our developers, which both Anthony and Paul definitely have for their projects. And then the whole opportunity thing kind of comes into play where it's like, you know, as we kind of mentioned earlier, games that we think are great that people just might not otherwise see because, you know, of, you know, a Kickstarter not necessarily taking off, or, you know, someone being really good at making games but not necessarily having the acumen to run a successful marketing campaign, or, you know, just as simple as having the resources to, you know, work a full-time job and also make a game in a reasonable amount of time. So providing that opportunity as well. And then the community thing is probably the biggest part of it is that it's like we want to build communities around these games. You know what I mean? Like we want to have people that are super stoked for these games and, on a first name basis with the people who make them, long before the game actually comes out. So I think that when we saw, those criteria already kind of being met by Rise and Antonball, it was just like slam dunk. You know what I mean? So being able to see those things kind of come to life as only ideas that we had for what we were looking for, and then just having them kind of slapped right down in front of us in the form of those two games was something that really brought us to, want to work with those development teams.
Awesome. So finally, I got to ask, with Proponent in the future, what are your hopes for the company? What do you hope will happen going forward with these two games and beyond?
I mean, success is the name of the game, right? We want to be able to continue to take those three things that I mentioned and provide them to other passionate game developers.
Down. I didn't know
Oh, oh wait, we want to like stay afloat. Weird. Yeah. But we want to take those pillars of our business structure and be able to just bring more people into it. You know what I mean? Like by 5 years from now, I want to be able to throw a company party and have it feel like a family reunion. Like that's the vibe that I want Proponent to give off. I want it to really, live up to the name of being like, we're a proponent for these small time indie developers who have so much to offer, but not necessarily a platform to do so. So being able to provide something to the gaming community that isn't necessarily all just dollars and cents and, really has a human aspect to it that kind of sets the stage. And, 10 years from now, if, we see the kind of success that I'm hoping for, I'd love to have that kind of be a standard of like, oh, you don't have to rake indie developers over the coals to, have them see their first release come to life. You look at Proponent. They were super cool with all their devs, and now all these games are amazingly successful, and you have all these great opportunities. And these devs have now split off and kind of done their own thing, and they all kind of come back to this home base of this publishing company that kind of got them started. So in a perfect world, that's where I want to see this company 5-10 years from now. But for now, it's just one day at a time, getting these first two releases out and playing it by ear every step of the way.
For sure. Yeah. Anything you want to add on, Steve, or is that
I'm trying to think of like the best way to put this into words. It's funny because like indie means so many things now, right? You can say indie studio, and that means everything from like the scrappy dude who is literally like his LLC is his apartment's address, all the way to Bungie, technically, right? Because they're independent. Mm-hmm. They bought out like the rights to their own IP. They're doing everything on their own. And so I think it's like this whole thing of like, okay, well, what is indie to us, and where do we fit in there, and how do we like cultivate that like success in that thoroughfare for other people who are kind of like on a similar scale of guys like Antonball, Rise of the Betrayer, and develop like a sense of consistency around that. I am a real big believer that there's a lot of really great experiences to be had like in this like part of the ecosystem that we're operating in. Some of my favorite games are like this scale, like Dead Cells, and Kingdom, and things like Hollow Knight, right? Shovel Knight, like Rogue Legacy. Just number 2 just came out. Rogue Legacy, the first one, is one of my favorite things, and these are all sort of in like that same space. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to be mined here, and there's like a way to kind of like differentiate ourselves and be like, we're indie up to maybe like triple B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, everything Riley said is dead on, for sure.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time to tell me all about it, guys.
No, thank you for
playing both games. seeing what's in store. And yeah, this has been Spencer Legacy with MonsterVine, and check out both games. They come out next year.
Yeah, first quarter next year. So we're looking at like a late February to mid-March release window.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. And to everyone watching, thank you for watching.